Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to take a look at the current state of the X-Men universe as I think it's going to look when Doomsday arrives. Now, I did a video just the other day on the casting announcements for Doomsday, and I got a ton of questions about this crazy X-Men universe, because it is truly a crazy timeline. So, there will be spoilers for pretty much anything dealing with the X-Men, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. So we're entering a new month of April. That means a new contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And I'll announce the March winners in my next video. Also, we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. So arguably the confusion started as soon as Marvel announced this particular set of X-Men returning in Doomsday. I mean, it's really exciting, right? But how are they alive? Most of them are dead, aren't they? So let's talk about that first. I mentioned in the earlier video that we have this very complex X-Men timeline, but I'm going to talk about it at a high level. You have the original timeline, and then Days of Future Past created a second timeline, and in particular, in Days of Future Past in 2023, we saw a new universe. We saw that Wolverine arrived back in 2023, and sure enough, everybody that was dead is now alive. Jean Grey is alive, Cyclops is alive, Professor X is alive, and we have, of course, Beast and Storm wandering around just like nothing ever happened, right? Everything is perfect. So that explains how most of these actors are back. But the biggest question I got on the previous video is, what about Mystique? Didn't we see her die in Dark Phoenix? And isn't Dark Phoenix in that new revised timeline? So she should be dead. What is up with that? It was a great question. I should have addressed it in the earlier video. My apologies. So, to talk about that, we have to talk about the 7th X-Men that was announced, and that's Gambit. I think Marvel did this on purpose. They made sure to announce Gambit so that we knew all of this team is going to be together. I don't think there's any way we're going to have multiple X-Men teams. Gambit is going to be part of this team. So the inclusion of Gambit means we now need to look at this bottom part of the timeline, which includes Deadpool and Wolverine. So, remember, in the movie, they rebooted basically the entire X-Men universe. The Time Ripper destroyed it all the way down to 1%, and then we saw that Deadpool and Wolverine linked together, and they recreated the universe. They literally said it was regenerating. And the result is a brand new universe, brand new branches. It's basically starting over from scratch. And I think this is such a key line, found your new anchor being. And now this Wolverine and this X-23 are replacing the original ones in the universe, right? So the old Wolverine is replaced by the one in Deadpool and Wolverine. And the young X-23 is replaced by the older X-23 in Deadpool and Wolverine. And finally, that means they can also use the recreation of the universe to explain how Mystique came back. Plus, I think we're going to see that Gambit was indeed rescued from the Void, Marvel Sparkle Circle, and will be joining this team. I just don't see any way that they're going to have multiple X-Men teams going on in the movie. That's just way too confusing. This is our team, and it's solidifying how first things were rebooted in 2023, and then they were rebooted again in 2024. Gotta love the X-Men universe, right? Then I also mentioned in the video that I believe that 10005 is the same universe that we saw in the Marvels. So in other words, Beast that we saw, that's the same Beast from the rebooted universe. And when they talk about Charles asking for an update, that is the Charles that we saw in the rebooted universe. And that even means that Binary is part of this universe. So basically, when Monica Rambeau went through this rift in space into the other universe, I think that was 10005, and that's why I ultimately said down in the lower right-hand corner, we now need to add in the Marvels to this overall timeline. And honestly, that's the part that is the most confusing for everyone. How do you fit what happened in the Marvels timeline-wise with what happened in Deadpool and Wolverine? So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Okay. So I'm going to simplify the timeline down to just the things we need to really discuss this. And that is Deadpool 2, Days of Future Past, at least the rebooted part in 2023, and the Logan movie. So why are these all important? Well, number one, in Deadpool 2, right, we learn that he's aware Logan died in the Logan movie. It's very confusing, but he's a fourth wall breaker. In fact, we even saw in the No Good Deed short that Ryan Reynolds put together, look, he's going past a movie theater with Logan. So Ryan Reynolds is kind of teasing that, yeah, maybe Deadpool actually got to watch the Logan movie. But either way, he is fully aware that Logan dies in 2029. And by the way, that makes all of this in the same timeline. They're all connected together. But okay, the next thing we need to talk about is the fact that Deadpool actually jumps into the 616 universe. So what I'm going to do is the top is going to be 10005's timeline, And the bottom is 616's timeline. And the red is indicating jumping between universes. So remember, he jumps over in there. We saw him talking to Happy, right? They tell us it's Earth 616. They tell us it's the sacred timeline. They even tell us it's March of 2018. The only thing I don't like about this is they say he somehow did it with Cable's device. And that is impossible because we learned in Deadpool 2, the device just lets you slide through time. In other words, your own timeline. It should not allow you to jump between universes or timelines, however you want to look at it. But Deadpool going to do as Deadpool wants to do. He's a fourth wall breaker, so I just kind of have to accept it, right? But Cable's device, for the record, should not have allowed him to do that. Anyway, we do know that he jumped over into 616. And what's interesting is that seems to imply that 616 and 10005 are synced in their timelines because he leaves Deadpool 2 in 2018 and shows up in the MCU in 2018. So keep that in mind. They are in sync. All right. Then we see in the Deadpool movie that it advances 6 years, right? 6 years later in 10005. So that means we can add on here on the timeline Deadpool and Wolverine. That's why I'm saying that the universe was reset by Days of Future Past in 2023, and then it was reset again 1 year later in Deadpool and Wolverine. Craziness, right? All right, so now let's look back at the sacred timeline. So after Deadpool leaves, that's when Infinity War happens, and then of course Endgame happens, and then of course the Loki variant gets created, and that's where we get Loki Season 1. Okay, so now we need to pause to try to figure out how all of this fits in the timeline. Luckily, Marvel tells us that. Marvel tells us that we basically get The Marvels, then Loki Season 2, then What If Season 2, which isn't as relevant to this discussion, and then Deadpool and Wolverine. So they're telling us the order of all of these on their season-by-season breakdown. So that means now we can put in The Marvels. The Marvels happens sometime in 2026, I believe in September, but there's some debates on that. But the point is, it's definitely 2026. And that means then that Monica Rambeau would have shown up in 10005 in 2026. They're basically on the same timelines, which I think is a smart move by Marvel because it makes it all a little easier to process timeline-wise. But here's an interesting question. Did Monica enter 10005 prior to the TVA arriving? What I mean by that is, remember, in Deadpool and Wolverine, they're celebrating his birthday, and he blows out the candles, and there's a knock at the door, right? But the TVA hasn't shown up yet because Marvel hasn't said that Loki Season 2 has happened yet, which means the pruning hasn't stopped, which means the TVA wouldn't have shown up yet. And of course, we know that, right? Because Logan died in that timeline. That's the whole point. He died, and then when the TVA shows up to grab Deadpool, everything then changes. Basically, they reboot the whole universe. But my point is, Monica seemingly arrived in 10005 prior to the TVA interfering in Deadpool's life. Okay, so now let's get the rest of Loki Season 2 on there. So here we go. Loki Season 2, we know that it ends after the Marvels, because that's what we're told. But how long transpired? That's been an interesting debate, because Loki asks OB, how long will it take me to know everything that you know about mechanics, physics, and engineering? Let's assume I don't know much, but I'm a fast learner, and I'm a god. Decades? And OB says centuries. And of course, then they tell us centuries later. So doesn't that mean that the span between Loki Season 1 and Season 2 is centuries? No, because remember, Loki was living the same day over and over again thanks to his time slipping. It was just like the Groundhog Day movie where Bill Murray learned to play the piano by living the same day over and over again. So for him, who knows how long it was? A year, 2 years, 5 years? But for everybody else, it was only one day. So I just want to stress, that does not mean there are centuries between Loki Season 1 and Loki Season 2. However, we do know, as Mobius himself said, it's hard to say because time passes differently here at the TVA. So we don't really know how much time transpired between Loki Season 1 and Season 2, but we know it's not centuries. So the important takeaway is Marvel is telling us that Loki Season 1 and Season 2 is running parallel from a timing standpoint to both 616 and 10005. Because remember, after Loki Season 2, that's when the TVA finally show up in Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, it is important to note they go back to 2024. They didn't go to 2026. They went back to 2024. Now, that seems a little confusing at first, but remember, we know that the TVA can jump around anywhere. They jumped back to 1982 in Loki Season 2. They jumped back to 1977 to try to find Sylvie. They even jumped forward in the first season to 2050. They can go wherever they want in the timeline. So why did they go to that particular time? So I am guessing they figured that Deadpool was at a low in his life. I mean, and he was, right? He was very depressed. They thought this was the best time to convince him to come with them, to go to the MCU, right? And to leave his world so they could destroy it. So that's why they went back to 2024. And, of course, that led to the reboot of the universe, which we talked about, which led to solving the Wolverines, which led to solving the X-23s, and, of course, which brought Mystique back. So after the reboot, everything's great. And in fact, you could argue that because of the reboot in 2024, the future is unknown, and thus we don't even know if Logan happened in the rebooted future. I would bet that it didn't, because we have a brand new Wolverine, we have a brand new X-23. I think everything is very, very different. But the real question now is, does that mean that Monica Rambeau was rebooted as well? I mean, like we said, right? She seemingly showed up before the TVA went into Deadpool and Wolverine, which reset the universe and seemingly would have reset it around her. So I'm going to throw out a crazy idea here, and I really want your opinion on this. Even though we know that the Marvels happens before the end of Loki Season 2, and it's only after Loki Season 2 that Paradox goes into Deadpool and Wolverine's universe, because he goes back in time to 2024, I actually think the universe is reset prior to Monica's arrival in 2026. Oh my word, why did they make this so confusing? Marvel, you're killing me. Because there was another solution they could have done. All they would have had to do is say that Loki Season 2 ends before the Marvels, right? I mean, look at that. It's a simple looking change, but it cleans it up so much. So here's my big request of Marvel. Could you just switch those two? Just switch Loki Season 2 and the Marvels. That's all I'm asking. Just switch those two like that. Anyway, they didn't do that, so we got to put it back to this. But I do think I know why Marvel did this. Remember, at the end of Loki Season 2, that's when the tree is created. And I think Marvel wanted all of the multiversal shenanigans, including the Marvels, to happen prior to the tree being created. Because now everything is nice and stable, no one is traveling around and doing nutty things, and instead, we're now setting up this X-Men versus Avengers fight. So I think that's why Marvel did it, but man, it's a pretty crazy timeline. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think I got this right? And do you think Marvel should have done it in a more simple fashion? But whenever I do a video like this with all the complexities, we have to kind of pull back at the end and go, you know what? The important takeaway is we're getting this group of X-Men back and probably more. I bet there's more announcements to come. And then this group of X-Men is going to throw down with the Avengers. It will be glorious. So I do want to know your theories on the video. I do want to know your thoughts on the timeline and the metaphysics of it all. But I do think the general fandom is just going to be so excited to see the Avengers versus the X-Men. Cannot wait. Cannot wait. All right, so don't forget, April contest, be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you can win a book or a steelbook. And there's that membership option in case you're interested in that. And then I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are in the timeline section trying to figure it all out, and Billy's meme is perfect, right? Benoit Blanc telling us it makes no sense, but it is compelling. So we would love for you to join us, 2,000 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can be part of it. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.